Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Beyond the Script. We are here with our Monday evening special show, Fresh, Natural, and Live, the raw, uncut conversation with health professionals. And we're glad to see you today. Tonight, I am excited about a very special topic we're going to talk about tonight. And we also have a very special guest, a very good friend of mine, Dr. Milton Mills. And he's going to discuss the topic of COVID-19, how it makes you sick, but how you can prevent it. There's a lot of information in the news, certainly in the last few days, couple of weeks even, about the spikes in cases, and the hospitals are filling up and governors are talking about possibly closing down again. And a lot of my patients are coming in very nervous about this COVID. I saw a patient the other day came in with a mask and she was depressed and she was concerned about COVID-19. And I just talked to her. She was having dreams about death and the like. And of course, a lot's going on, the COVID-19, the riots and the things like that. What we want to do, especially tonight, is educate you. You want to have information. You want to be informed, have knowledge. And that's going to give you the comfort of knowing that things are not as bad as you think they are. So our special guest tonight, as I said, is Dr. Milton Mills. Dr. Milton Mills practiced critical care medicine in Washington, D.C. area, and has served previously as Associate Director of Preventive Medicine and as a member of the National Advisory Board for Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, that's PCRM. He has been a major contributor to position papers presented by PCRM to the U.S. Department of Agriculture regarding dietary guidelines for Americans, and has been the lead plaintiff in PCRM's class action lawsuit that asks for warning labels on milk. A major focus of Dr. Mills' patient advisement, as well as his lecturing, is the use of nutritional measures to reduce the risk of major chronic diseases. So he's going to inform us on the issue of COVID-19 and some natural things you can do. Before I bring Dr. Mills in the audience, I want to reacquaint you with our regular co-panelists. We have with us tonight Dr. Celeste Palmer. Dr. Celeste Palmer is a board-certified pediatrician, and she takes particular interest in nutrition as a means of healing her patients. She's been doing this for a number of years, and she practices in the Houston area, taking care of patients in both the outpatient setting and also outside of the clinical setting and natural settings, and helping patients, her pediatric patients, reverse their disease. She also worked with young adults as well. Dr. Pam Atkins is co-founder of the Center for Wellness. She is a knowledgeable physician in family practice, has a background in the family practice, also does work with women's health and women's hormone stability. She has her undergraduate degree at Howard University and studied family practice at the Howard Hospital Medical Center in Washington, D.C. Isosa Edosuam is a Master of Science and a clinical certified nutrition specialist and also a behavioral coach. She is also known as the Raw Girl and treats patients all over the world as she counsels them in lifestyle modification, weight loss, and detoxing their lives with nutrition. And also Dr. Floyd Atkins. He's a graduate of Morehouse College as a BA in biology. And Dr. Atkins is a retired podiatrist, and he practices preventive medicine in the Houston area. And we've been friends and colleagues for a long time. And of course, yours truly, I practice cardiology in the Houston area, and my passion is helping patients avoid the need for cardiovascular treatment in the traditional sense by using natural approaches such as nutrition and other types of natural medicine. So the focus of this forum is to help you improve your life, enhance your health, enhance your life. Sometimes you have to use traditional therapies, but we're here to help you get alternatives to that, et cetera. So without further ado, I'm gonna bring Dr. Milton Mills into our studio. Dr. Mills, hello, good evening. How are you feeling?
Hey, Baxter, it's good to be here, man. I'm feeling pretty good.
So again, as I said in the outset, a lot of people are worried and nervous about this COVID-19. People walking around with masks, and I'm not against wearing a mask. I guess it's okay wearing gloves, but I'm of the adage of doing a complete job in terms of improving your health. And I see COVID-19, this infection, as a health problem. And so my way of addressing a health problem is to improve the body's overall well-being. What is your take on this, and what's your insight, or what are you seeing?
Sure. I look at it like wearing seatbelts and driving in a car with airbags. Now, the fact is that we all know that when we get in a car, we have to drive safely. We shouldn't be drunk or on other drugs. We need to obey the speed limits and the stoplights. But we also know that having things like seatbelts and airbags means that if for some unforeseen reason we are in an accident, we're more likely to survive. So that's the way. I agree with you 100% that the most important thing is for us to make sure that our health and immune function are optimized by practicing the kinds of dietary and lifestyle behaviors that will allow that to happen. But over and above that, there are other things that it is prudent to do to lessen our risk of transmission. And so that's where we get to the PPE, or the protective personal equipment. I am a firm believer that if a person is out in a enclosed public space with people they are not familiar with, or they are somewhere where they are going to be tightly packed, like say riding the subway or the bus, that at this point it is prudent to wear a mask, because that will lessen the likelihood that if there is someone who is infected with COVID that is in your immediate environment, you are less likely to inhale droplets from this person that could be infectious. It's the mask usage is most effective when two people are wearing masks, because it cuts the transmission, the probability of transmission down to less than 5%. Now, there are some things that people do with these masks that are really silly. You'll be walking down the street and you see people driving in the car and they got a mask on. That's like having a condom on when you're in bed by yourself. Anything for you, okay? And if you are out walking your dog on the street and there's nobody around you, you're not dealing with nuclear fallout. So it doesn't make sense to have a mask on your face. It only matters if, as I said, you are in close proximity to people that you don't know, you aren't familiar with, and there's a reasonable risk that they might be carrying the virus. Then that affords you some protection. But outside of those situations, no, you don't need to wear these masks, and it's better not to wear them all day long when they're not performing a useful function.
So, Milton, so just kind of make the illustration. So let's say at one extreme, you've got, 6 people on an elevator.
Sure.
That would be the ideal place to have the mask, because it's conceivable that if you got 6 people breathing out COVID breath, then the amount of COVID breath or COVID bacteria in that closed space is more concentrated. Is that a reasonable way to think about it?
Exactly. Or like I said, if you're riding a subway or a bus and everybody's packed in there, then at that point, yeah, it's prudent to have on a mask for protection. Now, gloves are an entirely different matter.
Okay.
People are completely misusing gloves. Now, and everybody here who's a healthcare worker knows, gloves are single-use utensils, meaning that you walk into a patient's room, you don some gloves, you deal with that patient, and then you dispose of them. When people are wearing gloves out in public or at the supermarket or at the department store, they are in effect making themselves a walking fomite. Because once you touch something that's contaminated, if you don't dispose of those gloves, you now become a source of contamination. So it is much better when you're out in public to do hand washing, frequent hand washing, as opposed to using gloves, because with gloves, you're just picking up God knows what and carrying it around with you. And that is what you don't want to do.
One question. I want you to address the social distancing issue for people too, because I know it's a hot topic question.
Sure. So the whole idea behind social distancing, which is the 6 feet or more, again, is to the decrease the likelihood that when someone talks, coughs, or yells, if they expel droplets that are carrying the virus, those droplets are less likely to travel beyond 6 feet. And then also, if you have on a mask, then they are more likely to be prevented from reaching you by that mask. So that's the idea behind the social distancing. It's the distance that it is thought droplets, infected droplets, can transfer from one person to another. And again, where it is possible, I think it is prudent to try and observe that. Although I don't think, let me just speak for myself. Personally, I'm not obsessive about it. I've seen people in a department store. I was going to get some orange juice, and this woman who was just standing there taking up space turned around and stared at me, "Yeah, step back." And I just smiled at her and got my orange juice and went on because she was a Karen and I didn't want to go
there. Do you have a mask on? If you have masks and social distancing, or does it make a difference?
Yeah, certainly when you have on a mask along with social distancing, again, cuts down the likelihood of transmission. So yes, it's helpful to have on a mask. But again, I think, how can I say this? Because I don't want to be reckless, and I don't want people to be paranoid. I think that masks are most important when you're in large groups. You understand? If I'm going to my dentist's office and there's 3 people in the waiting room, I'm not going to sit up there with a mask because I don't think it's necessary. Unless somebody comes over and try to kiss me. But if they're sitting in their seat and I'm sitting in my seat, we're both reading our magazines, we're good. It's mainly when you are in a place where you cannot, where there are, number one, I would say more than 10 people, because then you start to get a lot of exhalation and potentially the air can become, seeded with infectious droplets. And 2, it becomes more difficult to maintain reasonable social distancing. Now, I will tell y'all, ever since I learned about TB, whenever I'm in public and somebody coughs, I stop breathing. I hold breath until I'm at least 20 feet away from them. And again, that's another thing that you can do if you don't have a mask on. If you're next to somebody and go, I can't, just hold your breath and get away from them. Because then you don't inhale whatever they have exhaled.
Yes.
Okay? So those are just some practical tips that we can use so that we are not terrified of each other and acting like we are paranoid and living in nuclear fallout and afraid to breathe the air, because that's unnecessary. All right. Any other questions? So
take us into some of the things we can do, because let's say you're wearing your mask and you're doing all the right things, but it's very hard to hide from these little viruses, and they're all around, and you're more or less inevitable to catch it. So what next?
Or come in contact with it. So let me go back to my car analogy. So if the PPE are your airbags and your seatbelts, we know that even if I have a car that has airbags and seatbelts, if I get in that car drunk and drive at 95 miles an hour on the highway, I'm probably going to kill myself or somebody else, okay? And if I don't kill myself, I'm going to be severely injured. So the most important thing is to drive safely and observantly. And the analogy is the most important thing we can do to protect ourselves against COVID and any other infection is to have a healthy, robust immune system. And is there any evidence that supports that idea? Of course it is, because we know that people who have, quote, pre-existing conditions, people who are older, are much more susceptible to this virus. Why? It's not because they carry a diagnosis in their pocket. It's because those pre-existing conditions weaken their immunity weaken their immune surveillance, and make it more likely that when they come in contact with something, that organism is going to get a foothold inside their body. Now, let me switch analogies and talk about armed forces. The best armed forces are armed forces that recognize when an enemy is heading towards your shore, you meet them at the shore, and you push them back into the sea. So you don't let them get a foothold in your country, okay? That's what the Atlantic Wall was supposed to do, but it didn't, fortunately. But it was supposed to prevent the Allies from even gaining a foothold on the continent. But he had, unfortunately, fortunately, he was rather stupid. And there were some serious breaches in that Atlantic Wall, and that's what we exploited and got in there and got him out of power. But when it comes to our body has layers and layers of defense. We have the first layer of defense that we have are barrier defenses, such as skin, mucous membranes, and so forth. We also have antibodies that will attach to viruses and bacteria and fungi, and basically ideally grab onto them as soon as they start to try and enter our body, either through our mouth or our lungs, identify them for the immune cells that then come and destroy them right away. So what are some things that actually help ramp up our barrier function and barrier immunity? So that's one thing we want to talk about. Another thing is that our body has specific mechanisms that it uses to deal with viral infections. There are specific cells that can recognize either viruses, or they can actually recognize cells that are already infected with a virus. So you can think of this as you can look at somebody who's holding a Confederate flag and know that that's not somebody you want to deal with, or you can look at somebody who puts on a MAGA hat, and you also know that's another fool I don't want to deal with. Both of them are infected with the same thing, and that's racism. One, it's easier to see the MAGA hat. So likewise, when cells become infected with viruses, they start showing on their surface little MAGA hats, if you will. These are proteins that are made by the virus that then go to the cell surface that can alert your immune system, hey, this is a bad guy. I need to get rid of this. And then you have cells that come out and attack these virus-infected cells. That's if your immune system is functioning the way it's supposed to. Well, it actually also turns out there are compounds in foods like mushrooms that will actually attach to viral infected cells, which is sort of like, hey, come over here, get this guy. This is a bad guy. They help alert your immune system to the fact that you already have a stealth invader inside your body. So that's why it is important to eat certain kinds of plant foods, because they can help prime and alert your immune system to, again, kill these viruses and viral infected cells before they can actually set up an infection. And then we know that our white blood cells are responsible for killing pathogens like bacteria, viruses, and viral infected cells. But the question is, how do they do that? They don't do that just by being present. They actually have mechanisms that they use to destroy these pathogenic particles and pathogenic cells. But in order for them to do that job, they have to have certain cofactors. So it's like a soldier who has a rifle. Well, it's not enough just to have that rifle if you don't have bullets and you don't have a firing pin inside that rifle. It's not going to do you any good. Likewise, there are cofactors like zinc that help our immune cells perform certain tasks like generating compounds like hydrogen peroxide, or mediated through what's called superoxide dismutase, and other enzymes and genes that need things like zinc, selenium, vitamin C, and other cofactors to do their job. And if instead of eating a diet that gives you zinc, vitamin C, mushrooms, antioxidants to help your immune cells do their job, you're just plowing down at Popeyes and Chick-fil-A, then you will have an immune system that has a bunch of guns that don't work. And so when you encounter a virus or bacterium, your immune cells, they might be alerted, but they can't do anything because they don't have the nutrients they need to fight off this virus. And is there evidence that this is true in COVID? Absolutely. Some of the earliest studies that were done out of China showed that the people who died the quickest, had the worst course, were most susceptible, had low levels of a critical mineral called selenium. Other studies have identified low zinc levels. We've known for a long time that zinc is critically important for an antiviral, anti-cold, anti-flu response from our immune system. We also know that vitamin C is important. And we also know that D3, commonly referred to as vitamin D, is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. And I don't like calling it vitamin D because it's not a vitamin. That whole nonsense started when the dairy industry put D3 in their products to entice people into buying them. And so, one, your listeners should know that D3 is not normally found in milk. It's added by the dairy industry. And two, they're doing it to try to sucker you into buying a bunch of mucus and crap that's going to clog up your sinuses and your respiratory system. And you don't need it. You can take the supplement. Now, let me say this. If we were all doing what we were supposed to do, and that's running around butt naked in the sun, we would make about 20,000 IUs of D3 every day. That's what's been measured in African populations. But of course, we're indoors most of the day. Even when we're outside, we're covered up with clothes. So we generally do not get quite enough sun exposure. And that is why our D levels are not optimal. So that's why I recommend taking a supplement. So let me just run through a couple of quick slides, talk about immunity, and then we can talk about diet on the back end a little bit more, okay? All right, sure. I'm going to start with this slide on fiber. Now, you guys can all hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right, cool, because I can't see. All right, so there are two types, but many varieties of fiber. There are water-soluble fibers, and these are like your gums and pectins, and they're in the softer plant foods like fruits, vegetables, and so forth. And they do amazing things for your body. We don't have time to go into all of them, but they actually help trap bacteria, viruses, and stuff, and help your body excrete them out of the body. They prevent, as you can see, heart disease, diabetes, colitis, a number of cancers, and they can be broken down into products by the bacteria in our colon that, in conjunction with immune cells that are primed by D3, create these compounds called cathelicidins. Cathelicidins are antiviral proteins that, when they're made by our microbiome, help protect us against viral infections. Now, there's also another type of fiber, and this is the bran type fibers that are made of celluloses and hemicelluloses that you find in grains, legumes, nuts, and like leafy vegetables. And again, much the same thing. They're broken down into short chain fatty acids and other compounds that actually help protect us against inflammation. They reduce inflammation and protect us against a number of different infections. Now, I'm going to come out for a minute and skip ahead to this slide. All right, here we go. We're going back. So now we're talking about things that enhance our immune system surveillance. Now, look at this. This is what this is like so cool. So these were a group of people who were given a pneumovax vaccine, okay? And they divided them into two groups. People that were eating maybe 2 servings of fruit and vegetables a day versus those who were making more than 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Followed them out for 4 weeks and looked at the amount of their antibody that they made that could kill the pneumovax vaccine. And the bottom line here is that you see that the people that were eating the most fruits and vegetables had the best immune response. All right? And that's the reference for it. And so I'm going to kind of just skip ahead here because this is really focusing on cancer. But one thing I do want to talk about is natural killer cells, because our immune system is divided broadly into the immune system that has to be programmed, and then sort of the automatic kind of just in-your-face immune system. Natural killer cells are cells that will automatically kill viruses, viral infected cells, precancerous cells, without being instructed to do so by the immune system. And studies have shown we've known this for over 30 years, that people who are plant-based have the best natural killer function. And again, that's what you want. You want very robust, very active natural killer cells, because again, they're going to make sure that the viruses or the cancers or some other infection won't even be able to get a foothold in your body, as opposed to trying to fight them off once they've set up an infection. Berries and other fruits and vegetables boost natural killer cell function. We also know that cruciferous family vegetables also increase the ability of B lymphocytes, in other words, the antibody-producing cells, to make antibody. So again, if you're eating your cabbage, your kale, your broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and so forth, that is going to boost your ability to fight off infection. But this is what I'm really getting at. Mushrooms were shown to increase IgA production by more than 50% for 2 weeks after only one meal of mushrooms. Now, again, what the heck is IgA? Well, there are different types of antibodies that our body secretes. IgA is the antibody that's in our tears, it's in our saliva, it's in the mucus that lines our gastrointestinal tract. So again, IgA is the antibody that is there to prevent bacteria, viruses, fungi from even getting a foothold in your body. So the higher your level of IgA, the more protected you are. Well, let's look what mushrooms do. You can see from this study that one meal of mushrooms, the red is the control group, boosted IgA production sky high, and it remained sky high for 2 weeks. Then it started to taper off. The point is that if people would continually eat mushrooms and include them in their diet, that they would always keep that level of IgA sky high. And the amazing thing was, this wasn't the fancy mushrooms. These are just, as you can see, the little white button mushrooms that you get at the grocery for your salad. So again, mushrooms are critically important for a healthy immune system. Garlic. Garlic also increases natural killer cell function, and we also know that spices like cardamom, turmeric, black pepper, and others also help with natural killer cell function. And what are called intraepithelial lymphocytes. These are the white blood cells that circulate through our mucous membranes in our skin, again, to help with that barrier function, are stimulated and programmed by compounds that are in cruciferous vegetables like the ones I mentioned. And this is done through what is called the AR receptor that is found on intestinal mucosal cells. It interacts with compounds from these cruciferous vegetables and programs and jazzes up these intraepithelial lymphocytes, and they go out and police your body and kill anything that is acting out and not behaving properly. IELs are, again, part of our first line of defense and protect us against bacteria, viruses, fungi, and also cancerous and precancerous cells. There are different types of what are called isothiocyanates in these cruciferous vegetables that help program these intraepithelial lymphocytes. And so sulforaphane is one that has been studied extensively. It has been shown to deactivate what are called phase 1 enzymes, which can actually promote cancer, but to also rev up these phase 2 enzymes. I'm going to skip this because that really pertains more to cancer, but sulforaphane also affects over 200 genes that help boost our antioxidant and anti-inflammatory genes. And again, that is exactly what you want and need, because the higher the level of antioxidant action and anti-inflammatory effects that you have, the lower your risk for any kind of pathologic process. Studies and lab animals show that if you remove or limited their access to green vegetables, their intraepithelial lymphocytes fell by up to 80%. Okay, so that's how crucial these vegetables are for us to have a good immune system. And again, it also explains why so many people stuck in the inner city that don't have access to supermarkets, to fresh, green foods, are so susceptible to something like COVID. Because as I said, if you've got an immune system that has guns that won't shoot, it's not going to do you any good. Chlorophyll, which is the compound that makes green plants green, also boosts not only immune cells, but it boosts their ability to communicate and signal each other so that they can organize and marshal together to fight off an infection.
Milton, real quick, I think you addressed this when you mentioned just the little white mushrooms, but Patrice Moshe wants to know what mushrooms are best. Are all of them equal? Do we know if there's a differential benefit from one mushroom to the other?
So the ones that have been studied most extensively are the white button mushrooms, the cremini mushrooms, which really are immature portobello mushrooms, and portobello mushrooms. But even the wild mushrooms also have amazing compounds in them that have been shown to stimulate our immune system and to protect us against infections and cancer. And the fact of the matter is that much of this research is in its infancy. So we know that the most common mushrooms have been studied most extensively, but there is goodness in all mushrooms, and the wild ones are more likely to have additional compounds that are beneficial for us. Joe,
are they better cooked or raw?
Either or. But the good news is that cooking them does not destroy these helpful compounds.
Good. Okay. And that's been looked at, right?
Huh?
That's been studied, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The studies themselves look at that, whether these compounds are heat stable, and they are heat stable. Another good book that people can get is Super Immunity by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and he talks about a lot of these things in his book. And these are just some of the studies that I used to draw this information from. All right, let's talk about minerals. So we already mentioned zinc plays an important role in both natural, that is the automatic immunity from the natural killer cells, the what are called leukocytes or polymorphoid leukocytes. And then there's the acquired immune system, and that's where T cells come along. They find something that that shouldn't belong in your body, and then they send off alarm signals and recruit B cells to make antibodies to destroy that organism or virus. And zinc plays an important role in both those different aspects of our immune system. It's a crucial cofactor for the normal development of cells, such as neutrophils, natural killer cells. Its deficiency will also decrease our ability to have acquired immunity through antibody production. Macrophages, which are these giant white cells that engulf, eat, and destroy pathogenic bacteria or even cells that have been taken over by viruses, are adversely affected when our zinc level is low. So when the zinc level is low, they can't do their job well. What people have found is that they will eat and consume bacteria or even a defective cell, but they can't kill it. And if they can't kill it, then it's only a matter of time before the cell itself dies and these pathogens are released back into the system. So that's why we need this zinc to help these cells do their job. And it also plays important roles such as DNA replication, RNA transcription, and so forth. And so the question, and it also potentiates when we are deficient in zinc, our cells are more likely to commit suicide, which is what we don't want. And so these are the studies that I drew this information from. And the recommended intake is the equivalent of 10 to 15 milligrams per day, or you can take like a 50 milligram capsule, every third day or so. And or I would encourage you to Google what plant foods are high in zinc and make sure that they're a regular part of your diet. Let's look at selenium. Again, dietary selenium, essential for optimal immune system response for both the adaptive and non-adaptive immune system. It's also a nutritional antioxidant that helps protect us against free radicals and other damaging compounds that can circulate in our body. The innate immunity, as we said before, includes our barrier function, and these non-specific cells like macrophages and neutrophils, which automatically engulf and try to destroy bacteria and fungi when they see them. But in order for them to be able to destroy those cells, they need to have the mineral selenium on board. Low levels of selenium are associated with reduced natural killer activity. And as I said before, studies did show that people who had the lowest or below normal levels of selenium were much more susceptible to COVID. T and B lymphocytes, which are handle the acquired immunity side of our immune system, also need this important mineral. And selenium deficiency also potentiates the formation of inflammatory compounds that, again, can decrease immune function, make us more susceptible to heart disease and cancers. There are a number of foods that are very high in selenium. Again, plant foods, I don't have time to show them here, but one thing I do want to mention is that the highest source of selenium in our normal diet are Brazil nuts. And Brazil nuts, 3 Brazil nuts will give you enough selenium to last you a week or more. So if you just get a bag of Brazil nuts from, your local health food store or I can't remember the name of that supermarket, the one that all the fancy people go, Trader Joe's, and just pop 3 of those a couple times a week, you're gonna be good. So these are the references, and recommended intake is the equivalent of 100 to 200 micrograms per day. But again, like I said, 3 Brazil nuts a couple times a week, and you're good. But there are also a number of other foods like avocado and other things that are also high in selenium. All right, let's look at vitamin C, which is a true vitamin. It improves a number of components of our immune system, including, again, this natural killer cell activity, the lymphocyte production, and protecting us against allergic reactions. And I'm hoping that the listeners here are starting to really understand why, if you don't have a diet that is actively giving you all of these compounds on a regular basis, you're like a country that fires its armed forces. You are wide open and ready to be invaded and taken over. And this is why you cannot sit up here and live on McDonald's and Popeyes and Burger King, because that stuff is poisonous and it does not give your body the nutrients it needs to be healthy and fight off these infections. Again, several cells in the immune system can actually concentrate vitamin C, and they use it to perform their activities in killing pathogens. It helps cells remain in what's called, here it's referred to as integrity. That means it helps them fight off reactive oxygen species and oxidizing compounds so that they are less likely to basically rupture their membranes and die. Vitamin C has been shown to shorten the duration of the respiratory tract infections, and because of its potent antiviral properties, also helps against pneumonia, malaria, and gastrointestinal infections, and again, supports the epithelial barrier function against pathogen, promotes the oxidant scavenging activity of the skin, therefore, again, protecting us against invasion. Now, what is the recommended intake? Well, the recommended intake can be as low as 200 milligrams a day, but that is designed to prevent you from getting scurvy, which nobody has seen since the age of sail. But we now know that we really need much higher doses to help give us the robust immune function that we need to protect us against things like viruses, cancers, and so forth. And then we come to D3. It's a hormone, like I said, made by our body when we're out in the sun. The most important wavelengths are those between 290 and 315 nanometers. And why is that important? It's important because the best exposure to sunlight in that range comes during spring and summer months. As the sun, begins to go lower in the sky during fall and winter, it's much harder to get these particular wavelengths. And therefore, if you're going to be out in the sun, you have to be out longer in order to get that exposure. Also, importantly, dark-skinned people have to be in the sun much longer to make their own D3 than lighter-skinned individuals. And that's another reason that people of color tend to have lower levels of this hormone. But it is essential for optimal immune system function. It, again, affects both the innate and adaptive immune system. The D3 receptor is expressed on all immune cells, including B cells and T cells. So again, if you don't have good levels of this hormone, your T cells and B cells are not going to be able to do their job because they won't know what to do, or they won't be able to perform their job effectively. Research has shown that D3 is critically important in the antiviral immune response, and many researchers are now coming to the conclusion that the reason that colds and flu decrease during the spring and summer is because the sun is high enough in the sky, people are outside enough that their D3 levels go up, and that protects them against cold and flu. But when the fall and winter comes and people are covered up and indoors, the D3 levels fall and they become more susceptible to these viral infections. Again, is there evidence to support that? Absolutely. There are a number of studies that have recently come out that have correlated D3 levels in the bloodstream with susceptibility to COVID. The lower your D3 levels, the more susceptible you are to both getting it and having a more severe course. And again, as I mentioned before, one of the things that D3 does, it works in conjunction with bacteria in our colon to upregulate these antimicrobial peptides called cathelicidins, which again helps protect us against a number of infections. It modulates the adaptive immune system by working on T cell activation so that they can tell the other cells what they do. And it's been shown to be low in people who have been diagnosed with cancer. This is the research. What is the recommendation? 5,000 IUs per day. Okay? And that's really still a very small amount, but this is what is more likely to get you where you need to be. Now, there's an important question to answer because doctors have taken to giving people monthly doses of 50,000 IUs of D3 at one time. Well, studies that have looked at that intermittent type dosing, huge dose, once every 3 to 4 weeks versus daily doses, shows that daily dosing is much more effective for enhancing immune system function and protecting us against infection than these once in a blue moon giant doses. And it kind of makes sense because daily dosing is more physiologic. We would be constantly making our own D3 if we were running around in the sun with no clothes on like we're supposed to.
Milton, along those lines, and you touched on a critical point with vitamin D3, but from the standpoint of getting all of these vitamins, my understanding is that the body recognizes food, not necessarily vitamins in isolation. Granted, I use supplements on a targeted basis, and I think everyone in the chat room use supplements as needed, especially when people have severe deficiency. But my take on it is that even across the spectrum of nutrients, the ideal form is whole foods. Now, our food sources have been compromised for lots of reasons and the like. But let's say you have, homegrown or sustainably grown foods or organically grown foods. I'd rather say sustainably grown foods without toxins, et cetera. Is it better to get your food from the whole food sources as much as possible and supplement as needed? Vitamin D or hormone D, if you will, is one, but other vitamins and nutrients are similar.
There is no question that the best sources of all these nutrients, with the exception of D, which has to either be made or ingested, is from food sources. And when I put the recommended intakes, that should be seen as what should be contained in the food you eat on a daily basis. However, just like a person who spends hours and hours in the mirror fixing their hair, fixing their face, and trying to figure out what clothes to wear, those tend not to be the smartest people, okay? Because you only have so much energy to expend in 24 hours. And if you spend it prepping, you're not reading very many books. And I bring that up because most of the foods that we have access to are domesticated versions of their wild relatives. And across the board, when you compare wild potatoes to domesticated potatoes, wild peas or beans to their domesticated versions, the domesticated versions have lower levels of a number of vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. And it's because those domesticated versions were bred for beauty. They were bred because they were bigger and they were prettier and they were nicer to look at. And if they're putting all a significant portion of their energy into looking good, they have less time to study. So I say that to say, food is critical. You cannot use supplements to try and undo the evils of a bad diet. It won't work. But you can turbocharge your healthy plant-based diet by taking reasonable and judicious amounts of supplements. All right.
Now here's a question from Madeline JC. Can sea moss also be an option to increase mineral vitamin levels?
Absolutely. No question. Not only sea moss, but seaweed. Seaweed is a wonderful source of nutrients, and especially like iodine. So yes, sea moss, sea vegetables can be very, very helpful and beneficial, for sure. All right. So just to finish with this slide, mushrooms have these. First of all, mushrooms are loaded with just hundreds of compounds we haven't even identified as yet. But some of the ones that we are familiar with are polysaccharides, polysaccharide peptides, proteins, terpenoids, nucleotides, and things called beta-glucans. And all of these things have an amazing beneficial effect in both boosting our immune system, but also controlling that immune system. Because the one thing you don't want is an immune system that is running wild, because you get what happened down in Atlanta. You get immune cells that don't know when to stand down, and they just start killing everything in sight. So you need to both have a boosted immunity, but you also need to have immune cells that are acting under control. And the compounds in mushrooms help modulate the immune response and make sure that it doesn't go too far in the overeager or overactive direction.
But Milton, I'm glad you point that out. I know you want to get to your mushroom slide, but that's really an important thing because, I mean, the thing is this: a lot of people who die from infections die from an overactive immune system.
Absolutely. Runaway immune
protocol. I'm sure you know in the ICUs, patients come in with ARDS. They have to get steroids. You have to suppress the immune system. So right. I tend to think of the immune system as being drunk. I mean, an unhealthy immune system isn't so much an immune system that's suppressed, but an immune system that is drunk and too wild and crazy, and it's going to attack self.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's why you need that balance. And our bodies were designed to eat and consume plant foods on a continual basis, and so it needs all of these compounds to help it operate appropriately, efficiently, and in a balanced format. And if we don't have them, then you can get the runaway cytokine storms with the massive levels of oxidizing compounds that end up destroying tissue and destroying people's lungs because their immune system is out of control. And that's yet another reason to make sure that our bodies are filled with these phytochemicals, antioxidants, and nutrients in the plant foods that help it function appropriately.
And I like to add plant foods only on a continual basis. But go ahead.
Only. Animal tissue and especially animal secretions are going to actually harm your body and your immune system and make you more susceptible to infection. Now, you remember I was talking about those compounds that actually glom onto certain cells and alert the immune system, hey, come over here and kill this guy. He's a bad guy. It's like the MAGA hat. Well, mushrooms contain what are called antigen-binding lectins that recognize and bind to the surface of cancer cells and also cells that have been infected with viruses, and they alert the immune system, this is a bad guy, come kill this cell, and that's another way they help protect you. They also contain what are called aromatase inhibitors, which lower total estrogen exposure in women, and that's one of the ways that they reduce breast cancer risk. So this is the book that I mentioned earlier by Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Very good book, a lot of good information. You can order it from your local bookstore or Amazon if you have to. Jeff Bezos doesn't need any more of our money than we have to give him. And then this is, again, just one of the studies that I use to draw this information from. So
I'll place a link to purchase it in the chat if anybody is interested in taking a look at the viewers are on site.
Yeah. So that's the. Oh no, actually, you know what? Let me just show this slide too, real quick. I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but I'm gonna hurry up. This is just the antioxidant capacity in different plant foods. So what they did was they used as a baseline something called Trolox, which is a compound that is a relative of vitamin E, and they compared the antioxidant capacity of various fruits and vegetables to this compound. And what you can see is blueberries are leading the list, beating the band, followed by blackberries, cranberries, strawberries, etc. But even your vegetables are also very high in these compounds, and they fall in a bunch of different families. And the bottom line is, should you just go out and eat nothing but blueberries? No. The better, the more complete your diet is, the more varied it is, the better and healthier it's going to be for you. Remember, the reason God created different colors and different plants and different people is because he loves diversity. Diversity is where it's at. All right.
Acai berries are much higher than blueberries, and a couple other superfoods as well.
And what was that in sauce? I'm sorry.
Acai berries are even more higher than on the list than blueberries.
Right, but the bottom line is, I want people to realize you eat all of them. Don't just focus on one of them, because they each have something a little different, and it's like a choir. You can have 10 altos in a choir, but all of their voices are different, and they are beautiful. So understand that, something may have a little bit more antioxidant capacity than something else, but the point is, you still need that other fruit or vegetable, because it's going to give you something that the blueberries can't. So you want to eat all of them together. Not at a single meal, otherwise you never stop eating. But try to have it on a rotation so that you are including these things in your diet on a regular basis.
Yeah, foods are very complex, and they have many. We can measure certain nutrients, but you can't measure everything. And so, just because food X has so much more, nutrient X compared to food Y, as you said, there's a balance in the mix, and there are things you don't know that food Y may have that X doesn't.
But let me ask one quick question, because Asosa, is that Asosa? You're right about the acai berries. Is there some place where you can buy them fresh or frozen? Because I haven't found a source of them. They're dried ones, but I'd love to get my hands on some fresh or frozen ones.
Yeah, so you kind of have to move to the Amazon, which they're destroying. But I went to Brazil last year, and it was like the time of my life because I was eating acai every single day, and it's fresh, and they don't add the extra sugar to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Here you can get the the little frozen packs.
Okay.
In Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and whatever, but you have to read the labels because they always add sugar, which defeats the whole purpose of getting all these great antioxidants and so.
Well, thank you for that. That's important to know.
Here's a question from the galley, Angela Joan Henderson. If you want to go plant-based and you suffer from UC, hiatal hernia, and eating lettuce and lots of greens cause heartburn, what can you do? What we do with our patients, especially if they have inflammatory gut and some mechanical problems, we will start them on raw juices, maybe smoothies, and let the inflammation calm down, and then slowly advance them to those things. Now, some people tolerate cooked foods more, but raw cold-pressed juices I found is to be very helpful. Anybody else have any thoughts or recommendations?
Baxter, I just want to co-sign what you said, because there actually are a number of plant-based gastroenterologists who have shown that they have been able to heal ulcerative colitis and even Crohn's disease on a plant-based diet. But as you say, when the colon is super inflamed and sick, it's got to be done in a stepwise fashion. And you can think of this like if you get a burn on your skin, jojoba or shea butter is normally very good on your skin, but you're not going to put it on a fresh burn because it's going to irritate that burn and make it worse. likewise, with something like ulcerative colitis, you've got to take this gentle, stepwise protocol that you mentioned so that the colon can heal itself, and then bring in those other foods that will allow it to remain healed. The number one thing that the colon needs is a compound called butyrate. Butyrate is made from plant fiber by bacteria in our colon. But again, that has to be a healthy colon and not an inflamed one. So yes, you can become plant-based, but as Baxter said, you got to do it in a controlled, stepwise fashion to allow healing in the colon, and then you can bring in some of these other foods.
And Shonda H is sort of supporting what you said. I have a hiatal hernia, no problems anymore on a plant-based diet. So congratulations, Shonda.
I've seen that several times. People, in fact, one of the nurses I work with, he became vegan not because he believed in it, but because he has such severe GERD and acid reflux. That was the only thing that cured it and helped him. And he was sold on it and was committed vegan.
Last little comment, I'll go to some of our pre-submitted questions. I was always told I couldn't be healed. So that's again from Angela. So yeah, oftentimes you're told by your physicians you can't be healed. And that's one of the purposes of this show is to bring an alternative approach. And we're going to do that by bringing experts like Milton to the table. And we may even have patients come and tell their stories who've been treated by us. But it's important to get this information out. So we have a couple of questions.
I have a question.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Dr. Mills, I wanted to step back to vitamin D or hormone D because there's a question in the chat that I hear often and I would like to be addressed. So this person says, how much time should a dark-skinned person need to be exposed to sunlight, and does the body store D3 until needed? Also, our best optimal hours of sun exposure for us, and kind of because what's happening now, especially with COVID, I'm hearing people saying that they are afraid to go outside, literally. Children, I'm a pediatrician, and so they're not allowing their children to go outside. And I've also heard some adults who have decided they don't want to go outside. So can you please address that?
First of all, that is exactly backwards. The studies are showing that when people are out in the sunlight, they do better, they are healthier. It's when you're cooped up in a house with limited ventilation and this stuff is coming out and it's hanging out in the air and circulating that you're at higher risk. So no, get outside, go outside, be outside. The optimal hours for exposure are probably between, I would say, depending on the time of year, 12 p.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. And the sun is, basically highest overhead between 12 and 2. And that's when you're going to get those most powerful and strong sun rays. Now, let me answer a question that some people may have. Well, people will say, wait a minute, but what about skin cancer? Don't I have to be worried about sun exposure and getting skin damage? Let me answer that by asking a question that all of you know the answer to. If I've invited Baxter over to my house and fed him nothing but carrots, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a week, what would happen to him?
He'd turn orange.
He'd start looking like Trump. Yeah, exactly. He'd turn orange. And the reason is that our bodies are programmed to store plant pigments in our skin. Why are those pigments made by the plant? To protect them from sun damage. So the point is that if you eat a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet that is comprised of all of these brightly colored fruits and vegetables, you will have natural sunscreen that will protect you from a reasonable amount of sun exposure. And you won't have to worry about skin cancer.
Great point. So yeah, that's an issue that we're hearing. I'm saying with my patient, I'm glad you brought that up. So that's because people are staying indoors. It also has effect on mood. Fresh air, there's vitamin D and there's a lot of other benefits of fresh air we probably have yet to discover. And so I think it's going to be best. Faye Parker says, waiting for your book, Dr. Mills. Can you drop us a projected date and time? So
Seriously.
Lord knows, me too. Let me throw in one other little thought. God told Adam and Eve to eat plants and run around in the garden. And if we had taken that advice and eaten plants and run around outside in the sun, we wouldn't have all these problems we have right now.
Hey, let me go to some pre-submitted questions from our panel before we run out of time. We're running up on the hour, but Michael asked the question. These were submitted prior to the show. I took antibiotics in January after an ingrown toenail surgery. I've been adding corn to dishes, and I ended up with dry skin around my eyes. I heard about pellagra and the stain from corn and started taking niacinamide and applying castor oil to the area at night. I also drank a non-dairy kefir for probiotics. I'm much better now. Do you know of any foods rich in B3 that might help prevent this in the future? So anybody want to chime in on foods that are rich in B3, vitamin B3?
Sure. Although I read that question, I was like, is he sure he had pellagra? I mean, pellagra is pretty, like, pellagra comes with dementia, diarrhea, dermatitis, and then obviously the last D was death if you don't address all of those things. And I was like, that's pretty severe. But if he feels like he was responding to the B3, fine. I think it sounds like he had antibiotics and he needed to get his gut flora together. And so the kefir also, the non-dairy kefir also helped him. But some B3 rich foods, brown rice, non-dairy. I'm assuming he's vegan, so I'm just going to say all the vegetable ones. Because if you look it up, you're going to see all the meat ones anyway. So you can look that up if you want. Avocado, brown rice, portobello mushrooms, peanuts, sunflower seeds. Those are some good ones. And then I would just say, just make sure that you're not focusing on just one nutrient. The B vitamins are water soluble. You need them every single day. You need to make sure your diet's actually balanced, and you probably need a decent multivitamin to cover your bases that has the B complex vitamins in them, especially if you think that you might have been deficient. But I'm not so sure if that person had pellagra, though.
The next question is from.
Can I just toss a little bit in there?
Sure, please. Yeah.
First of all, again, so it's a wonderful answer, and probably not pellagra, but just really bad dry skin. But I want to caution people about that if they're eating a lot of corn, to make sure that they're getting it from an organic source, because traditionally grown corn is a nutrient sink. It actually draws more nutrients from your body than it gives you because there's nothing in it. So definitely, if you're going to do corn, make sure you have an organic source. That's all.
No, that was the other reason why that's important is because pellagra, there's primary pellagra and there's secondary, and primary happens in developed countries where they're just eating tons and tons of corn. And it's not necessarily, these days, we know it's not organic. It's not necessarily non-GMO. So. Wow.
Those good points. So Janice Hine, is it possible to talk about lipoprotein A? I have it, and my cholesterol is high, even though I'm plant-based and eat very little oil. Should I take cholesterol medications? LP(a) is a protein. Cholesterol molecules are carried by proteins by and large. Lipoprotein A is a similar protein, has similar characteristics molecularly to LDL particles, and is highly atherogenic. There's strong genetic factors. Blacks tend to have higher LP(a) than whites. Now, if you look at things online or book, they'll say there's nothing that really can control it, nor diet, nor exercise. But we published in last year in a study, we were first to show in the medical literature that you can reduce LP(a). We showed a reduction of LP(a) by 16% in just 4 weeks with the raw detox diet. It's probably related to inflammatory markers, and so we had a 30% reduction in inflammation, and that probably helped out in the reduction in LP(a). It may behave like an acute phase reactant. So I would imagine if somebody has a lot of oxidative stress, the LP(a) may be up, and as you reduce oxidative stress, it can go down. More work needs to be done, but there is evidence, based on our study, showing that lifestyle, particularly a plant-based diet, particularly a raw detox diet, can reduce it, but it has to be pretty aggressive. And there may be some other factors that would be helpful. The answer to should I take cholesterol medications, statin drugs do not reduce LP(a). some of the new injectables can reduce Lp(a), but the data is out. They don't reduce inflammation. So I would recommend an aggressive dietary approach to this reduction and try to avoid medications. And there's one last question. We're running up on the clock. Oh, yes.
Can I just ask you, would you please email me your study, man? I'd love to see that. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I'll email it.
Can I add something to that dietary approach as well?
Yes, please.
Also, with the LDLs, you want to look at your omega-3 fatty acids and whether or not you're getting any or enough. And then you also want to look at, make sure your vitamin D levels are good. Yeah, I feel like those two things are really important as well.
So the omega-3s and what else was that?
Omega-3 fatty acids.
D3.
D3.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's the other thing I was thinking of. I forget that a lot of people who take in a lot of high fructose corn syrup, agave, or some of those like added sugars, you can actually increase your LDL. So if you are plant-based, but let's say you eat in little processed treats, you know what I'm saying, every day, that might also be increasing your LDL. So I would look at all of those things.
Excellent point.
And this person also has a little oil from time to time. She has very little oil, but 0 is the only number I know how to calculate. So if they reduce from very little to 0, then that works pretty well. I did forget the PCSK9 inhibitor injections can reduce Lp(a), and berberine is a natural reduction, a natural PCSK9 inhibitor. So that's something that they can take. Perhaps, and I'm not aware of any studies showing that berberine reduces Lp(a), but just by transfer, it might help. Last question. I'm a fan of black fermented garlic. Is it as good as the white garlic? Anybody want to try to take this one on?
I should know the answer to this question.
Allison level, whatever the Allison level is.
If there are no studies, I tell you what, we'll research this. Patrice Moshe.
One thing you can look at it.
Who's speaking next? Who's up next? Sosa?
Oh.
You're up next week, so you'll answer this in your talk next week.
Yeah, I should know the answer to this question. They made us cook with it all the time, and I don't remember why. So I'll find out.
Well, look at the Allison level of the garlics, the black versus white that I'll tell you. Well, the Allison content is a number that they measure how strong a garlic is by Allison content.
Yes.
And do the black versus the white. And that answer, I don't know either.
And this, I don't know the definitive answer, but I know that in general, in nature, the more pigmented something is, y'all know I'm telling the truth.
All right. We'll keep the politics on the side here.
Politics, that's truth.
I'm just teasing.
Brown rice and wild rice and brown bread are better for you than white bread.
That's true.
That is very true.
That is true.
Thank you. I tell my patients the only right things at your dinner table should be the tablecloth and the people eating food. Everything else needs color.
That's a great one. We got some nice responses there. Well, we're actually a little bit past the hour, guys, and we want to thank our guests for coming and participating in the audience. And as Carol Burnett used to say, I'm so glad we spent this time together. But again, this is an excellent talk. Thank you very much, Milton, for such an excellent presentation and enlightening us on your insight into the immune system. Because really, we like to isolate disease states, COVID and Novid and these other disease states, but really it boils down to healthy human frame. And so regardless of what disease state it is, cancer, and I'm sure our audience saw that he was pulling from cancer slides, but we were talking about a healthy immune system, which deals with a healthy body, a healthy frame, human frame. And so it doesn't matter what the disease state is. All of these diseases are the same. And they can all be destroyed by the body. So again, for our audience, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And until next week, we want you to keep it fresh, natural, and live. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week with our next. What's our next topic? The benefits of bitter foods, right? And so you're going to enlighten us on that?
Sure.
Oh, that's cool.
And post it. So guys, come and join us. Tell all your friends. It's going to be a wonderful show. We're going to help you learn to eat a better bitter breakfast and a better bitter lunch and a better bitter dinner. So until next time, we're signing off.
We're ready for Passover. Yeah.